Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. What is your freedom number and why does it matter? The goal of my content is to teach the average person how to reach financial freedom in less than 10 years, even if you're not starting from the best position. And financial freedom means different things to different people. Some want to retire early. Others, like me, I'm not even sure I want to retire late. The retire part is not as important to me as the financial freedom part is. I kept having my sources of income taken away by things I couldn't control. After Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized. In 2008, I was laid off from a police department because of the recession. I think one of the riskiest things I've ever done for my family is have one job with one source of income. When I decided to take control of my finances, it took me about 8 years to reach financial freedom. This doesn't mean I stopped working. What it meant for me is that all of my living expenses were covered by income that I didn't have to sell my life 1 hour at a time for. So now I could work or not work based on how I feel. And if I ever do work, I know I'm doing it because I love the job and not because I need the money. I've heard people say, I love my job so much I would do it for free. I prefer, I love my job so much it's the only one I would do for money. Life is a lot more interesting when we make work optional. I like to ask people, what would it take for you to be financially free? So let's start with that. In a second, pause the video, go into the comments, and tell me, what is your freedom number before you watch the video? Thank you for doing that. Whenever I ask this question, my favorite response is when somebody says, I need $1 million, or $5 million, or even $10 million. In order to call ourselves financially free, first we need to understand a couple of things. For me, financial freedom isn't one number. It's a monthly number. We need money that comes in every single month that doesn't come from us selling our lives, and we need to know the amount of that money that would make us free. Here's where some investors make some small mistakes. If a person's freedom number is $1 million and they spend $50,000 a year, in 20 years, they're out of money. And on top of that, $50,000 a year now might be enough to live on, but when you factor in inflation in 10 or 15 years, it's going to be pretty hard to live on that amount. I also hear people say things like, I make $50,000 a year now, so I need to make $50,000 a year in passive income. Or people making $50,000 a year say, I want $10,000 a month in passive income, over doubling what they're making while they're working. These answers are closer to how I look at it, but they're still a little bit off. And there are other people who are really into math, who like the 4% rule, or want to save 25 times their annual income. And I don't use either of those. If you're familiar with my content, you know that I don't invest in stocks and I hate the idea of money being locked away in a retirement account. So while I don't invest in stocks, I would like to point out one thing. A lot of new investors miss one step when they're talking about how the 4% rule works. We can't just save 25 times our income and then start taking out 4%. Inflation would destroy us. And if you did that, the money would only last 25 years. If you're 70, 25 years sounds okay. But if you retire at 30, 25 years doesn't sound so good. The key to the 4% strategy is that the money is not saved. It's invested. And over a long enough timeline, the expected return for a well-diversified stock portfolio is 10% a year. Over the last century, that's been the average. And yes, there are some years that are way better and some years that are way worse. But over a long enough timeline, the average is 10%. The goal is that with an average return of 10%, you can take out taxes, you could take out your 4% that you live on, and what's left should cover inflation. There's a lot of averaging going on and hoping that the downturns don't happen soon after you retire. And remember, you don't want to get caught living on hopium. So there are some investing coaches that are talking about doing a 3.5% strategy or even a 3% strategy to have a better chance of that money living longer than you do. To be fair, I don't invest in stocks, and I still hate the idea of retirement accounts, so I probably butchered that explanation, but you get the idea. For me, the first step is still finding your freedom number and knowing why we need it. The really good thing is you probably already have the data to get that number. We don't need to guesstimate. We need to look at what you have been spending. Our cost of living expenses aren't a mystery. Most of us have the same ones. The amounts might be different, but the categories are the same. Like housing, transportation, food, phone, internet, entertainment, subscriptions. Look at your last 6 months' expenses in all of these categories and get an average. Some people talk about adding 10% or 50% or even doubling this number to consider yourself financially free. With this amount of money coming in every month without having to sell your life, work becomes completely optional. I didn't look at it this way when I was first starting out. I just wanted more passive income coming in from rental profit than what I was making as a police officer. This was pretty simple, but it had some flaws. First, when I was a cop, I used to have housing expenses. Now I house hack. That lowered how much I spend every month. Second, when we're working, we're paying the highest amount of taxes, earned income. And third, when we're working, we're usually paying into a retirement account. When we're financially free, saving for retirement becomes irrelevant because our strategy should grow and account for inflation. One of the things I don't talk about very often are the benefits to my investing strategy beyond cash flow. Since I don't do cash out refinances or use HELOCs, home equity lines of credits on my properties, and I don't plan on ever selling, I don't really factor appreciation or principal paydown into my freedom number. But over a long enough timeline, eventually the mortgage will be paid off. The tenants will pay it off. I do 30-year fixed rate loans, so in 30 years, the mortgages will be completely paid off. When this happens, the portion of the payment that was going towards the principal paydown and the interest will then be added to your cash flow. So if you buy a rental when you're 30, right about the time you're 60, even if you never make an extra payment, you will get a huge increase to your cash flow every month. If you buy one when you're 50, right about the time you're 80, when your cost of living expenses can go up due to health concerns, you will also be getting that increase to your cash flow. Knowing your freedom number gives you something specific to measure and work towards, because remember, what isn't measured can't be improved. Now that we know we can find our freedom number by looking at what we have been spending, and that financial freedom comes from an amount of money that comes in every month from a source other than your job, in the comments below, now let me know what you think your freedom number is. I dropped some hints at the beginning of this video. As a reward for the people who made it this far in the video, and a way to say thanks for watching the whole video, I'm going to be giving away 2 copies of Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant. The first 20 people who leave their freedom number in the comments below will have 2 chances to win one of these audiobooks. I'm going to roll this dice to find out if they won it or not. Then, out of the first 60 people, including those first 20, I will roll this dice to give away the second. So the first 20 have 2 chances to win. One of the things you need to decide is how you're going to reach financial freedom. Are you going to use the 4% rule and invest in stocks? Are you going to invest in rentals and let the cash flow pay for your life? Or are you going to do a combination? So far, I focus 100% on rentals, and someday it may make sense for me to diversify into another asset class. But not today. For now, I'm happy to let the income snowball grow my portfolio. And there is one last thing I want to wrap up with. I actually figured out a secret that helps me be happy every day. Every time I use this, it works. All you have to do is
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.